Welcome back to another episode of Modified Garage. On this episode, I'm pulling the front suspension off my Ford Falcon BF XR6 Turbo. The reason I'm pulling the suspension out is because when I change the suspension, I put Koni red adjustables in and a matching king spring or a super low king spring. What ended up happening was I was putting the top front strut back in, I've over tightened the nut, I ended up snapping the bolt. So what I did end up replacing this side, and I left the right hand side the way it is. And what I've noticed, there's a 5mm difference between one side of the car and the other. So while it's not a great deal, the problem is when I'm driving over the roads and there's a slight undulation, the tire actually rubs against the guard. Now I've had the guards rolled as well, but it's not happening on this side. So what I want to do, I want to pull it out. I've got two new top struts to put in on the suspension on both sides. So I'm going to start from scratch, brand new, pull everything out. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to readjust the Koni reds. I think I had them set at halfway. So what I want to do, I want to set them at full soft because it's not actually a comfortable ride at the moment. I want to see if I can soften it up as much as possible. So let's get to it. So this is the left-hand side of the vehicle, and you can see, so this side measures from the ground to the top of the wheel arch. So from here to there, that's 635mm. And this is the right-hand side of the car. So from the ground to here measures at 630mm. And you can actually see the visual difference. So here you can't actually see the top of the tire, but on the left-hand side you can. I've got my two top strut mounts, one for the left, one for the right. Fingers crossed that it fixes my height issue. I can only try it, so I'll get the car jacked up and we'll get straight onto it. I've got the wheels off the car, I've got the car jacked up, I've got it on safety stands. So just remember, whenever you're doing something like some work under the car, put safety stands on. I've also got the jacks as extra support, so if anything does happen, I've got a few layers of defense. Anyway, so to get the suspension off, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start in the engine bay here. I'm going to try and not remove everything. So there's 3 nuts that are 17mm. So I'm going to start just loosening them up for now, so that you can just find them. Once it's under the ECU, and then 2 are on the other side, but the one under the ECU's, there is a space to fit it through. So let me loosen these up. And there are torque settings for these, so we'll get into that later. But for now, just loosening them up. That's for the top done. I'll come and take them out properly at a later stage once the rest of it's all loose. Next, I'm going to loosen this and the ball joint. So just take this off. All right, so for safety, and because my brake line is getting a little bit tighter, I'm actually going to remove the caliper and I'm just going to hang it off the suspension somewhere. So just so I don't wreck a brake line, because even though it's got a bit of flexibility in it now, as soon as I start to move a few things, loosen those up. So the brake caliper bolts, they are a 12mm. So just take those off. There we go. Just get out of the way safely. Now, I'm not sure. I'm going to try and just undo this bolter nut here and then take those, and hopefully there's enough space, but I'm not sure if that'll clear. So if that doesn't clear, then I might have to do these linkage pins and undo that to get full movement but I'll try here first. So this nut and bolt, so on the bolt side I've got a 24mm socket, and on the nut side I've got a 22mm me to socket. I'm just holding it with a breaker bar, and then there we go. So I've undone the 3 nuts up the top in the engine bay. I've taken the caliper off. I've taken the nut and bolt out of the bottom of the suspension, but I don't actually have enough space. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off this link here, and then fingers crossed I'll be able to get this lower control arm further down so it just slips out. So that will go up like there. So there's no room, you can see. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to undo this here. You might not be able to see it clearly, but just the upper one, the upper side of the link. So I need a spanner. Okay, so I'm going to hold this part of it with a shifter and then loosen the nut on this side. So I've got a 17 mil. I think I need to remove both of them. I couldn't get the link pin this out just by pulling it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to loosen the bottom one, and so I can take the whole thing out together. But what I've noticed, the nut is actually a 14 mil on this side. This one was a 17, this one's a 14. Taking out the pin, and then that should give me the space that I need. Just got to watch out for these wires. Use your legs. Okay. This. There you go. So I've got this. You saw me take this out of the car. So what I need to do next, I'm just going to put this down. I need to take the spring off. Because what I need to do, I need to adjust the Koni, the shock absorber, to its softest position. And then I can't remember how to do that. And then need to compress the spring to get access to this, and also so I can do this, so then it doesn't break in my face. So I'm just using spring compressors, nothing fancy. And what I do, I don't use any power tools for this. I just slowly do a little bit on both sides. So it does take a little bit of time. I won't show you the whole process, but I just keep on compressing them till I see some looseness in the spring. Now, be careful at home, because this it can be dangerous, but this is how I do it. Okay, I've loosened off the spring enough now, so you can see I've got movement back in here. So I've got my 17 mil spanner and just an Allen key, and so I just have to loosen this off now, just to hold it in place. I've got my suspension all pulled apart now, and as I said at the beginning of the video, I've got these adjustable shocks. Not 100% happy with them, but I had them probably around midway, I think, on my when I originally set them up. So what I want to do now is I want to soften them up. So these are the Koni red adjustables, made for a BF Ford. Well, I don't think they're made for a BF Ford Falcon, but these ones actually fit. I'll put the part number, I think it's scratched off, but I'll put it in the link in the video. So to soften up the suspension, all I'm going to do is I'm going to bottom out this shaft. So I'm just going to, on this piece of timber here, I'm just going to bottom out the shaft, and then I'm going to lift it up, And then I should be able to hear that engagement. And then what I'm going to do, now that it's engaged, I'm going to turn it counterclockwise, and then it stops there, and that's it. And that's all there is to it. Well, I've got everything apart. It's time to replace my original bump stops. You can see they're crumbling apart. It's going everywhere. So I've just run to the auto store, got some replacement. These are Munros, not sponsored, and they just literally go on like so. And that's all there is to it. I was having a look at this as well, and even though that one was probably changed about 20-odd thousand Ks ago, I hardly drive this car, this is actually a little bit thicker than the one I just took off. So fingers crossed, I'm gonna get the height adjustment that I need on the other side. So what I need to do is I need to compress the spring a little bit more. Just remember, safety first. When I was tightening the spring clamps up, I was wearing my safety goggles. Now, I've got to the stage that I think I've got enough in here now. So what I'm doing, I'm setting it up as the way it's in the car. Now, with these Ford ones, you just have to remember that these top bolts, they're slightly off center. So I'm just trying to marry it up to how it's going to sit in the car. But what I do is, my little trick is, when I've got it in the car, everything's tightened up. What I do sometimes is just compress the springs a little bit, and that helps me do that final adjustment why it's actually bolted in the car. So all I've got to do now is put the washer on and the nut and get this done. So I've got all this tightened now, fixed up this nut. So I've decided I'm gonna leave the spring compressors here, because then that's gonna allow me to be able to adjust and follow these bolt holes in the car. So I'll be able to get those in, and once they're in, I'm gonna release these while it's in the car. All right, now it's time to put it back in the car. So you can see I've got some adjustment there. So I'm gonna try and get this in, line it up with the top. And this is heavy. Okay, so this has caused me more grief than it needed to. So these Mackay parts, I had everything together and it just wouldn't go in, and I couldn't figure out why. Then I got the spare one, tried to put it in, and it wouldn't go in. So I've actually gone back to the factory one of these, but used the brand new rubber from Mackay. So it doesn't fit. I'd have to open up the holes a little bit more for these things to go in. So that's scrap. So I've wasted a good half an hour trying to figure out why it's not going together. So now I've finally got the, I've put it all back, nearly all back together now. All right, let's go back to the bottom and start putting everything in loosely. And then what I'm gonna do is then torque everything up properly. Get that in there like so. That's going in there. So there's a tip that I just want to share with you all, which I didn't do on this side because I tried to cut some time out, but just with the lower stabilizer link, if you took both of those out only, you can actually push the sway bar out of the way, and then what that allows you to do is get the lower control arm and actually push it down further so you can get the whole strut out easily. By not doing that, I actually struggled taking it out. I had to really work it, and then on the way putting it back in, I had to work a lot harder for it. I didn't film the right hand side because it's basically a mirror image of the left hand side. The only difference is you've got the water reservoir tank there, and all you need to do is take the two 10mm bolts out, lift it up and just push it to the side, and then you've got access to all these three nuts for the strut tower. So I just want to go through the torque settings. Now this comes through to the engine bay, and there's three nuts that attach to this. You only want to do these to 35 Newton meters. That's what's telling me in the book. If you over tighten these, and it has happened to me, this will just shear straight off. The next part that I had to undo, and I'm just working in order from top to bottom here, the upper ball joint to steering knuckle pinch bolt and nut. So that's 90 Newton meters. So that's the upper control arm where it touches the steering knuckle, or the upright, whatever you want to call it. So that thing there sits right in line with the tire more or less. That's 90 Newton meters. So the next bolt and nut is the shock absorber, the bottom of the shock absorber to the lower control arm. So that's 80 Newton meters. The next part I did was a stabilizer bar links, whatever you want to call them. I just did those up tight. I think it's between 35 to 55 Newton meters. Stabilizer bar to lower control arm link nuts, 55 Newton meters. And then the last part, I had to take the brake caliper off so I could hang it. So the brake caliper torque settings are 37 Newton meters. And that's pretty much it. So the suspension is all sorted now. I've put it to soft, full soft on both sides. So we'll see how that goes going forward. Hopefully it improves the ride quality as well. This was the aftermarket part that I bought, and I didn't end up using it because the bolt holes are slightly bigger than factory. So I've used the original Ford ones with the car, and all I did was take out the rubber that came with this and put them back in the factory ones. So I've got my original rubbers that sit in the top of the strut. So I was expecting a big difference between the two of them, but they're more or less identical. I've taken out, I've measured them, and there's really maybe 1 mil, 2 mil at the most, but there's not a massive difference. I was expecting more with this. So I have done my measurements. So I've taken it for a good drive now just to make sure everything is correct. I've tightened everything up. Take it for about a 5-minute drive just to let the suspension settle. It's still sitting 5 mil lower on the driver's side, and it's a little bit higher. But with changing these, putting the brand new ones of these parts in, it has lifted it by about another centimeter. So before the change, it was sitting around 635. Now it's sitting around 645. And same with this side, it's sitting higher at 650. So this was sitting at 640 before, now it's sitting at 650. So what I still need to do is take it for a drive and see if it actually changes any when I'm driving and there's any undulations in the road, to see does the wheel actually keep on scraping the guard. So I don't know till I really take it for a good drive and find a road that I can test it on. I still need to do the rear suspension. So the whole purpose of doing the rear suspension is to make sure I did put it to full soft when I did it originally. But I'll need to do that first before I do take it for a four-wheel wheel alignment, just to make sure that everything is correct and within specs. And lastly, thank you everybody out there watching Modify Garage videos. For your continued support, please hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, hit that like button, and I'll see you on the next video.